Welcome to the video today, guys. Today we're going to be going over some off-roading basics. Now, I'm not a professional and I'm fairly new into the off-roading world. I've been in the cars since I was young, real young. And it just happened that I got into off-roading about 3-4 years ago now. And since then, I've been on plenty of trails in California. I went to Utah and went to a few areas, pretty much like did overlanding over there. Planning to go back there again. That was a really fun time. Overall though, I've learned quite a bit when it comes to off-roading and how to prepare yourself before coming out on the trail, and then what to expect when you get on the trail. Also, when to use 4-high, 4-low, sway bar disconnect if you have such a thing, lockers front and rear if you have them. That being said, I'm not going to be able to go over every single thing, so I'm going to go over as much as I can think of. We're going to go through it one by one. I'll show you what I do before I get to the trail and when I get to the trail, and then going through it and leaving. First thing I want to talk about is planning the trip. So planning to go out on the trail. First, you got to make sure you got the essentials, which is some food, water. This all depends on how long you are going to be out there for. I mean, in reality, you never really know. Something could happen and you could be out there for hours and hours, even though it was only going to be like a 1-hour long trail ride. Also, some recovery gear would be nice to take as well, especially if you're only 2-wheel drive, low clearance vehicle, and you have street tires. Some traction boards might come in handy. And if you have an idea of where you're gonna go already, it's good to check on the conditions, not only the weather conditions, but also the trail conditions. It's important to see if it's open firsthand, because there's nothing worse than getting to a trail that you've been looking forward to, you've been planning, and it turns out there's a gate that's locked and there's no way to get through. Now, a good way to see if the trail is open and check on the conditions and basically get all of that information is through the Onyx Off-Road app. Now, I've been using this app since I started off-roading, and it has never let me down. In fact, it's been getting better and better the longer I've had it. They've been doing updates to where now you can see cell service coverage. You can plan and track your routes, see the total distance so you know how much fuel you might need to bring with you, and people share updates and photos, which is very helpful. You could download the free trial. I'll have the link in the description. Also, it's important to note that I would suggest saving your map. Personally, I like to save it in Google Maps and also on the Onyx Off-Road app. So I'll save the area that I'm going to be going to and a little bit outward of the main trail, just in case I kind of have to take a side road or I get lost, because most of the time you won't have cell coverage out here. And then that brings me to the next point, which is letting somebody know that you're going to be going out in this trail. The more information you can tell them, the better. That was almost 90. I didn't check exactly how much it was, how many degrees that was, but man. All right, so that would be a good scenario where I would use 4 low for the braking, for the extra assistance with the transmission braking. All right, so I just made it to one of the peaks here. All right, so I just wanted to step outside. That way we can get some fresh air. Teddy can stretch his legs, run around a little bit. Hopefully the lighting isn't too bad and the audio. I forgot to bring the microphone. So now you planned your trip, you got all the equipment, all the necessary information that you needed, and you're ready to hit the trail. As soon as you get here, I would suggest airing down your tires. It's a little subjective as far as how much you want to air them down to. Personally, I air mine down to about 20 psi or 18 psi. They are not beadlock wheels, so I run the risk of debeating the tire. Usually for most people that happens around 15 or lower psi. I brought mine to about 18 psi today, and as you can see, there is a little bit of a bulge. So what that's going to do is help the tire conform to any rock that it's coming over. Also, it's going to lay it down more flat on the road, so you have more contact with the ground. In return, that should give you more traction. More traction equals better grip, and better grip is just something that you should make sure that you have before it's too late and you're really wishing that you had it. Another perk of deflating your tires is the comfort that it brings. So the tire is going to be able to absorb more of the shock when it comes to going over bumps, rocks in the road, and ultimately that should lead to a more comfortable ride. Especially in my Jeep, that is very valuable. Very rare and very valuable to have comfort in here. If you own a Jeep, you know what I'm talking about. Solid axle life. All right, so after we deflated our tires, now we're moving on to determining if we need 4-wheel drive or just staying in 2-wheel drive. Or if you have 2-wheel drive, then when to engage a locker if you have a locker. Or hopefully you have really good tires for the terrain that you're going in. Usually I stay in 2-wheel drive until it looks like I need the 4-wheel drive. And usually I would need the 4-wheel drive in very loose gravel, or if I notice that I'm losing traction in 2-wheel drive. Overall, if you just feel like you need the 4-wheel drive, you need the extra traction there, by all means, engage it, as long as you're not using it on the street. If you're all-wheel drive, that's a different story. But if you're using your 4-high or 4-low in the street, you risk breaking something. 4-low, going into 4-low is a little bit different in each car, but for the Jeep, you have to shift it down to 4-high first, and then put it in neutral, and then go to 4-low. You not only have to put the gearbox in neutral, but you also have to put the transmission in neutral. And then once you do that, then you can shift it to 4-low and then put it back in drive. And usually I like to use 4-low for emergencies or something where I need more torque to get the wheels moving. Also, you could use it for something where you need a little bit more precision with the throttle. Some circumstances with precision for the throttle is if you're rock crawling or just climbing over something and you kind of need to control the speed that you're going at it. Or if you're in the sand or mud and you bury the tires and they're not really moving in 4-high because they're just stuck in there. Then you can use 4-low to get a little bit more torque out of them and hopefully get unstuck. All right, so now that we went over the very simple things when it comes to off-roading and beginning the trail, next is lockers. So as simple as I can explain differential lockers is basically when you turn on the differential locker, it will put both the wheels together. Both the wheels will have to move together, but overall, the circumstance where you could best benefit from a differential locker is when you have one wheel spinning and the other is not doing anything. So if you're in somewhere very muddy or if you're trying to climb some rocks, I would suggest having at least the rear differential locker on. Now, you kind of want to avoid having it on in unnecessary times, like on the road. That's the biggest one. Another one is basically if you don't need it. I would suggest having it off. That way you're not putting a stress on the differential. Because when you take turns, one wheel is going to be moving faster than the other wheel. The part in the middle is the differential, and that's a lot of the strain on it when one wheel is trying to turn faster than the other side. So hopefully I was able to cover some of those things and hopefully you were able to pick it up. If not, let me know. I will be more than happy to go over it in the comments or make a future video, maybe a short form going over things in a little bit more detail. For now, let's continue on the trail. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about driving along the trail. So some things to keep in mind are rocks and ruts. As a beginner, I didn't know where to put my tires, and so I was just kind of driving over things and trying to figure out what the best way is, what the best way was to kind of go over obstacles. And it took some practice and also some research. Pretty much what I practice now is placing my tires in a way that keeps the vehicle as level as possible. So if I'm going to be going into a rut, I try and make sure that, you know, it's not going to tip too much to one side. So you got to kind of predict where your tires are going to go and where they're going to end up, and then also how your vehicle is going to react to that. And that takes a little bit of practice and feeling, getting it down. And then another thing to keep in mind is the speed that you go about things. So I don't suggest going really fast over obstacles, because if you do hit something important like your differential, shock mounts, or anything that's exposed underneath like gas tank, oil pan, then if you're going fast, you're going to have a much stronger impact than if you're going slow. And this is another time whenever four low can come into play. So if you have to go slow over an obstacle and you feel like you're not going to have enough power into 4 high, or you kind of have to press the gas for it to kind of move slow, then I would suggest going to 4 low. That is definitely a good example of when to use it. And this just takes time to be able to get the feeling down as far as how your vehicle will react and how much clearance you do have. Knowing where your differentials are is pretty important too. So in the rear, mine is pretty center, and in the front it's more on the driver's side. So as far as going over rocks, I'd likely keep them away from the driver's side. That way they avoid hitting the differential. Most of the time it's best to put your tires over the rocks. And if you're going over ruts, it's best to place them underneath you and keep your tires both on top of them, on each side of it. So we finally made it to the end of the trail, and I see the main road right there. I'm about to take it and go home. But the last thing, the very important thing before you get back on the road, is inflating your tires. You should be sure that you have a way of inflating your tires before you deflate them, or at least be close to somewhere where you can inflate them again before you go onto the freeway. Because if you leave them deflated, there's going to be a lot more rolling on the sidewall, and that could affect your handling, and it could just be very unsafe. So alright, so that'll include it for today's video. If you guys have any feedback or would like me to go over something in the future with a little more in depth, let me know in the comments. Hopefully I was able to cover some important things for you, and if it helped you out, also let me know in the comments. Until next time, just remember, wherever you go, have fun.